Welcome to Step Into the Story. Incredible conversations of how the Bible changes lives, changes families, and changes communities across the globe. And here's your host, Phil Tuttle of Walk Through the Bible.
Welcome to Step Into the Story. Each time we get together, I have a special guest and we explore the intersection of God's story and their story. And today, I want to introduce you to a friend. Her name is Stephanie May Wilson. Stephanie, welcome to Step Into the Story.
Thanks so much. I'm honored to be here. I'm happy to be here. And I'll just take any time that I can get with you because I haven't gotten to see you or sit in your kitchen in a really long time. So this is like the next best thing.
Well, in full disclosure, and you hinted at it just now, Stephanie and my daughter Emily are good friends. Have had a lot of life experiences together. And so that kind of makes me somehow some sort of in-law to you or something like that. Yes. We're friends-in-law. I guess that's how we would say it.
I love it.
Stephanie describes what she does. She says, I'm an author and a podcaster. My biggest passion is helping women navigate some of the major life transitions so many of us experience in our 20s and 30s. And we'll surely be talking about some of that. Stephanie, I love what you're doing. Your demographic, your target audience is in some ways different than mine. And I know I'm not who you're after, but I just need to tell you every now and then, Emily will tell me about, Stephanie's talking about this on her Friday night podcast. Dad, you ought to find it. You ought to listen to it. And you are challenging me in my thinking. You are helping me figure some stuff out. So I'm not a 20 or 30 something young woman by any stretch of the imagination, but your impact is even broader than those that are the bullseye of your target. I just want to encourage you with that.
Thank you. Well, that's really special. Thank you.
So let's go back. Tell me about growing up, Stephanie May. Where were you raised? Tell me something about your family early on.
Yeah. So you hit the nail on the head. My name is really confusing for everybody, including my mom. So my maiden name is May. So Stephanie Louise May is my given name. And when I got married about 9 years ago, I had to figure out, what do I do about this whole name thing? Like, do I would like to take my husband's name, but I really like my name. And, what do I do about that? So people growing up always kind of thought that May was my middle name anyway.
Sure.
Because it's kind of a good middle name. And so I scooched it over. So now it is technically legally my middle name. But even my mom just doesn't sometimes she hyphenates it. Sometimes I don't know. It's everybody. It's confusing for everybody. So, but yeah, Stephanie May is who I used to be. I grew up in a suburb of Denver, Colorado. I have two great parents. I have a little sister. She's about 3.5 years younger than me. She's recently given me the cutest niece in the whole world. I'm a new aunt, which I know Emily loves being an aunt. And so I'm aunt to just the cutest little girl. And growing up, I have both my parents are psychologists, which is maybe an interesting, fun fact. And they never psychoanalyzed me, which is always people's next question. It was never weird.
Or that they told you about. They probably had some wonderful conversations you were not a part of.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. But I grew up just in I feel like in a house where it was really safe to be me, and where it was safe to feel my feelings, and where I felt really loved and supported and really encouraged. And mental health was always something that I was really comfortable talking about and pursuing, because I knew that was just a readily available resource in my life. Was, if I'm going through something really hard, why not have help with it? And so I think that was a really interesting way to grow up, I think. And then when it comes to my faith, we were Christmas and Easter Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think we'd miss Easter or I don't know. And so we definitely were more Christian than anything else. My parents did have spurts of taking us to some different churches. You know, they had kind of loose affiliations with different churches growing up, but it just, I wasn't really, I wouldn't say I was like raised in the heart of the church.
Right.
But I was raised in a really awesome home with really great parents.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my background.
Wow. That's, in some ways that makes your background really common, you know, the whole kind of, well, I'm not Jewish and I'm not Muslim, so I'm American, so I'm Christian, kind of by virtue of culture. But also having the parents you did was really unique. And even growing up, you know, if you sprain an ankle, nobody hesitates to get physical help, but yet there's still this stigma that if it's a mental health issue, then, oh man, is that something to feel bad about? And you're really blessed to have the mom and dad that you had, for sure. So you had some very definite and pretty early career goals, as I understand it. What did you dream about being?
I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. I say with a camera and a microphone in my face.
Yes.
I did. I really did. And that kind of started, my goals for when I was younger had to do with college, because that was sort of the first thing that I felt like you could sort of achieve or go after. And my goals were a little bit, self-serving in that I have always been kind of a beach bum. I'm less of one now. But I just have always loved the beach. I always loved California, and you know, growing up in Colorado, it was a pretty quick trip there. So it was a place that we could go a lot. And I just was like, I need to get to the beach. And so I started looking up like the most beautiful college campuses in the country that were as beachy as possible. And so that was my goal, is I wanted to go to school at Pepperdine or University of San Diego or USC. USC is not as on the beach as the other two, but so that was really like where I set my sights. And then it kind of a, you know, wild turn of events, I ended up staying in Colorado. And it was when I got my acceptance letter for the University of Colorado that I kind of started down this path of journalism. And I had applied for the School of Journalism and Mass Communications, as that was my sort of like, I guess this will be my major like direction. Cause I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but that sounded the most like kind of generally interesting. But because of my grades in high school, I was accepted right into the journalism program at CU, which wasn't normal, I guess. You had to, you know, wait a couple years before you could start taking journalism classes. You had to apply. It was really hard to get in. But I was accepted early. They had this new program called the Dean Scholar List or program, something like that. And so I just, you know, decided kind of all in one breath that I was going to go to the University of Colorado. And then I was sort of thrust into this world of journalism, and it turned out to be just a really great fit for me. And pretty much as soon as I got into college, I've always been like a passable student. Like my dad has always been so frustrated with me. He's like, you could do so much better if you just like tried harder in these areas. But I try so hard at the things that I'm really, really passionate about. And I just like do what I need to do to do well at the other things. And so that's kind of how I went through college, but I just poured myself into journalism. And the second I could get accepted, I started doing internships at all the major TV networks and their affiliates in Colorado. And I just loved it. I wanted to be, depended on the day, I wanted to be Christiane Amanpour, and I wanted to do like hard, like war journalism, which my mom was like, no.
Please no.
Please no, let's not. And then there was a while where I wanted to do political journalism, which I think I still really would have liked. And then I also wanted to host the Today Show, which you never know. Like maybe that's still in the future somewhere. But journalism was my thing, and I was really excited about it.
So what was life like in college? I mean, you seem to be on this path toward hyper success. Never quite meeting your dad's standards of how are you achieving and what more you could do. But I mean, from the outside, a lot of people would look at your life and go, she absolutely hasn't made, and she probably doesn't have a struggle in the world. And yet, the more and more people I meet, I'm now officially convinced that everybody is deeply insecure, even the people that make the rest of us feel insecure. But what's going on in your head through those years?
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm the same way. I cannot. And honestly, this might be like a gift that God, I think, has kind of given me over the years, is just I can't see a person without having a pretty good clue about what their thing might be. And it's like, and sometimes I'm guessing, but I know enough to go, there's something heavy on your, like, you're carrying something, or this is what you're working to run away from, or this is why you feel small, or so. I mean, it's just all of us. We all have something. For me in college, I'm racing down this path of journalism. My dad was super proud of me. He just was like, I feel like you're just doing enough to skate by in some of your classes. Like, you don't want to try a little harder. Like, no, I really don't. So I was really running down this journalism path. I was also really involved in Greek life at the University of Colorado. I was a Chi Omega, for anyone who that matters to. And I was on the Panhellenic Executive Council. And so I was like on a panel of 10 women. I think there were 10 of us, who was in charge of the sorority part of the Greek system. And I did that for a year. And so that was my life. I had, for when I lived in the house, my sorority house, I lived with 89 women, under the same roof. There were 89 of us. I know, it's pretty hard to imagine. And so, I mean, it looked like I had a ton of friends. I was succeeding there. I loved my sorority. It was it was a great fit for me, out of all the kind of options. But I really did feel there's probably not a time in my life where I felt more insecure than during those years. And I think it was a lot of things. I think I probably was depressed. I think I had some depression going on that totally was undiagnosed, which is crazy because, it seems like I would have all the tools to recognize something like that, but I just didn't. I had a lot of friends, but I didn't necessarily have a group of friends where I felt like I could be totally myself. I felt like I had to be a certain way to fit in. And then I also felt like if I wasn't that way, or if I was like vulnerable in any way, that I would sort of lose my place in the group. And I just didn't have people that I could really be open with. I had a lot of friends, but I felt very, very lonely. And I felt like I wasn't good enough in any way. Living with 89 other girls, the comparison thing is rough. Like, you can't brush your teeth without being in a line of just incredibly beautiful, successful, smart, amazing women. And it felt like they just all had it. They just were all doing so much better than me. And so I think the loneliest part of that season for me was, I just have this really distinct memory of not wanting to be on my own team. So like, it felt like I was like the last pick for gym class, or the last pick for the team, at recess. And I didn't even want to pick myself, because I sort of agreed with the things that I thought other people thought about me, that I wasn't good enough, that I was annoying, that I always said stupid things, that I wasn't pretty enough. I had all these guesses of what I thought other people thought of me, and I just totally agreed with them. And honestly, I don't know if that's what anyone ever thought of me, but it definitely was what I thought of me.
Sure.
And I think that was the loneliest part.
They were too busy worrying about what other people were thinking of them. I mean,
no kidding.
It's a universal game that we all play. And as we get older, we just switch currencies, but we do the same thing. It's tough. So there's kind of a downward spiral going on in your life, as I've read about. And this podcast, Step Into the Story, it is about how God intersects our story with His story. And you've already said you didn't grow up with this big Christian churchy background. The cool part to me is how God came after you. Unpack that story a little bit for us, will you please? This is so cool to me. If you've ever, as you're questioning, what is my value, what is my worth, now, Stephanie, as you look back on this, you've got to say, well, God thought I was worth something, because look what he did. So unpack that story. This will encourage a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to tell it in a while, so this is fun. So in the midst of all of this, just like a couple more details, I had a boyfriend who I just loved to pieces. I thought he was my person. I thought we'd be together forever. And right around my junior year, we broke up. And he was sort of like it felt like he was sort of like the pin holding everything together. He was like my safe place. He was the kind of the thing that I looked at when I was like, I feel like I'm not worth anything, but like he really loves me. And there were just so many things, so many roles that he filled in my life, and we broke up. And then also there was, and I think that this is true for a lot of college students, a lot of people, there was definitely a serious threat of alcohol abuse, like in my life at the time. And so I think that, it's really hard to be in a good place when you're drinking as much as I was. And so all of that was kind of together. And so then I go through this breakup, and it just I just fell apart. And my sincere recommendation, I think you'll retweet this, is if you're going through a really hard time, leave the country. Like, get on a plane and go somewhere different. Go somewhere where you can there's something about travel that I just will always love, but especially travel when you're in a really hard season of life. It just was the best gift to get to do that when I was in such a hard spot. And so that really terrible breakup and sort of falling apart of my entire life coincided with the time that I was already planning on studying abroad. And so my plan was to study abroad in Seville, in Sevilla, in Spain. And I went with my best friend since I was 8 years old. She happened to have chosen the same place. So her name's Michelle. We went together. And then she had a best friend that she had met in her sorority. We went to the same school, but she was in a different sorority named Kelsey. And so Kelsey, Michelle, and I ended up in Spain together. And the thing that I didn't see coming really is that in the recent couple of years, Michelle had become a strong Christian, and we were raised the same. Neither of us were really raised in the church, but she had met Jesus, and he had just totally changed her life, as he tends to do. And Kelsey was a strong Christian. She'd grown up a Christian her whole life. And so I'm sitting in Spain, and I'd never really interacted with Christians that I knew of. I kind of watched this thing happen in Michelle's life, but I wasn't really part of it. And then all of a sudden, my two pals that I was around all the time were people who deeply loved Jesus. And it was just this really cool opportunity for me to have some space to deal with what was going on in my heart. And then maybe for the first time, have really, really close, safe friends to unpack all these things with. And they gave me this just really incredible view of what a Christian is and what a Christian can be and who Jesus is and what it looks like in your life when he is a part of it. They also were really patient with me because I had a whole bunch of questions about church, about God, about people who follow Jesus, about Jesus. And they just patiently answered my questions as to the best of their ability for an entire semester. But I still wasn't convinced. I still just didn't know if I wanted anything to do with Jesus. But I did have, the more time I spent abroad that semester, the more my heart started to open to the idea that I wanted to have a relationship with God, or that I was like, I feel like there's got to be more than this. And I would like to know what it is. I would like to explore something beyond what I can see. And so I really, throughout the semester, started seeking God. I just wasn't totally sure what that would look like. And I wasn't totally sure that it was through Christianity because, again, I had so many questions about it. And I really was, I just wasn't sure. But then we ended up going to Italy for spring break. And I'll include this detail. You guys can take this out if you want. But I think it's pretty cool. So we were in Rome for a couple of days, and we did kind of a combination of like eating really good food, and we were exploring the nightlife, and then also we were going to all the like cultural sites because we're like, there to see all the stuff. And so the night before the big day, we had done a pub crawl. And and they gave us free t-shirts at this pub crawl. And so we like participated in this pub crawl. They gave us free t-shirts. We were excited about it, went to bed. The next morning we woke up and we're like, okay, we need to go see the Vatican. We need to go, tour St. Peter's. We need to go do the whole Vatican thing. Cause like we're in Rome and we're good tourists and we're here. And then because we had just gotten free t-shirts, we're like, we should wear our free t-shirts. So we put on our free t-shirts, still smelled like beer. And a little bit hungover, went to the Vatican, and our t-shirts say like, Spanish Steps pub crawl. Like, oh, you know what? On the back, it said something like, we came, we saw, we crawled.
Great.
So it was really classy. So that's how we went to the Vatican, and, we are, taking the tour. It's really great. And we walk into the Sistine Chapel, and we're there on a tour. And so she's telling us about, the ceiling, and I'm looking up, it's amazing. And it's almost time to go when all of a sudden I turn around and I see the fresco on the back wall, and it's the Last Judgment. It's Michelangelo's Last Judgment. And I feel like I have to say, this is not my favorite painting in the world. It's not like, I'm like, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. This is I like the ceiling better, I think, from an art perspective.
Most everybody does.
Yeah, it's kind of an intense moment also that's depicted. And so, but something about that moment, as I'm looking at the back wall of the Sistine Chapel, I just lock eyes with Jesus in the painting, and something in my heart just jumped. And it was like, I felt like I was seeing a best friend for the first time in a really long time. And I had this like physical like draw to go and like hug him. Which I didn't, because I would have gotten arrested.
Yes.
You don't touch the art in the Vatican. But so I just locked eyes with him, and I just felt this pull. And in my head, all of my fears, all my doubts, all my like judgments, all my, preconceived ideas of who Jesus is and, what Christians are like and all these things, they were just quiet. And I thought, I want to know him. I want to be friends with him. I want him to know me. I want to be best friends with him. Mm. And so in that moment, I just said, okay, Jesus, I'm in for this Christianity thing. Like, let's do this. And that was how it happened. And we walked out of the Sistine Chapel, and I'm looking at my two friends who had been investing in me for a really long time, praying for me for like years, it turns out. And I said, guys, I'm a Christian now.
Wow.
They're like, okay. And I really was. It took, there are a couple more like things that shifted in my life that made it, I think that gave God like the room to like inhabit more space in my life. And that kind of unfolded over the next over the next year or so. But I really did. I became a Christian that day, and God just took me on this wild ride that really started that day. And my favorite thing about it is that like I became a Christian in the Vatican, hungover, smelling like beer, wearing a pub crawl t-shirt. And that's where Jesus found me. And I have to remind myself all the time that he wasn't like, okay, so change out of that pub crawl t-shirt, take a shower, never go to a pub crawl again and wear this churchy outfit, and then you can come be with me. He's like,
exactly.
I'm going to take you in the pub crawl t-shirt.
Which is such a distortion of so much of the American church today that let's just front load the gospel with all this other stuff. You need to fix this about your life. You need to get your act together in this way. And then you'll be acceptable to God. Whereas you read the account of his life in the Gospels, and he's not after the religious people because they're not aware of their need. He's hanging out with people with really shaky, questionable reputations. I don't know if their togas or their robes had pub crawl written on them or not, but they might as well have. Yeah. And I mean, even to the point that the religious leaders were condemning him for keeping all the wrong company. And I love your experience. I love the authenticity with which you describe it, because you had the skepticism of a journalist. You had questions that needed to be answered. But in the end, you can never paint somebody into a corner with logic and they go, all right, I surrender. You are academically superior with me. I will now believe. It's still, as much as your mind was engaged in asking your questions, faith is still an issue of the heart. And there you are in the Sistine Chapel. And you're like, it's true. Mm-hmm. It's true. I want this for my life. Well, we are just getting started. We got so much more to talk about. But even now, as you're listening to Stephanie's story, if regardless of where you are in this process, Walk Through the Bible, we got a lot of resources that can help you in this pilgrimage of faith. And I want to tell you about one of those now, and then Stephanie, I will be back to continue her story.
When a master artist is creating a sculpture, he has a plan in mind for the stone. The skilled sculptor knows what he wants to achieve, and he uses his chisel to create the work of art he envisioned before he even picked it up. This is the lesson of Chiseled, Becoming the Masterpiece God Created You to Be, a 6-session Bible study from Walk Through the Bible. Chiseled is based on the life of Simon Peter and how God crafted him into the man and leader that God always wanted him to be. In God's hands, anyone can become a masterpiece. God's work in Peter's life shows how he can work in our lives too, to lovingly shape and sculpt us into the likeness of his son, Jesus. God will chip away everything in us that doesn't look like Jesus, making us into a living masterpiece that will forever reflect the beauty and glory of the artist himself. Find out more about Chiseled at walkthrough.org/chiseled.
Welcome back to Steph into the Story. My guest today, Stephanie Wilson, Stephanie May Wilson. So you have just really met Jesus for the first time, not the cultural version of Jesus, but there in the Sistine Chapel going, I want this. I believe. I trust. God, one thing that I know about you and from your earlier part of the story, if you do something, you're not going to do it halfway. And so you throw yourself into this. You've got the encouragement of Kelsey and Michelle, who were kind of like your spiritual midwives, bringing you to this point. Really? And now it's time to, if I'm going to be a Christ follower, what does that mean? And I know we're cutting whole significant things out of your story, but how long after that was it that you decided to go on a mission trip?
So it was okay, are you talking about my first mission trip or are you talking about the world race?
I'm talking about the world race, yeah.
Okay. So it was, probably 3 years.
Okay.
Maybe 2 years before I decided. It really, missions became a thing for me immediately. I got duped by Michelle into going on my first mission trip. I thought I like to travel. I had no idea. I just had never been on a mission trip. I didn't know that it wasn't leisurely travel.
Is this a 4-star or a 5-star mission trip? Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, it was it was a lot of pouring concrete, and it was like the best week of my life. It was amazing. And so I really got the missions bug. I fell in love with missions immediately. And I 2 things kind of happened at once. The first thing was I got involved at the college ministry at University of Colorado, and that's Michelle had worked Michelle was working there. That's who I went on this mission trip with, and they offered me a job for the year after I graduated. It was unpaid, I should say. It was an unpaid internship, but they did offer it to me. And so that was, that was one of the options that I had to choose between as I was graduating. And then the other thing was, there was a journalism, like a political journalism internship that I could do in Washington, D.C. the summer after I graduated. And I had the option to do either that or a 10-week mission trip to Ghana in West Africa. And kind of all at the same time, I decided that I was ready to walk away from journalism, like overnight. My heart had changed. And I couldn't explain it more than that. The fabric of my insides was different. And this passion that I used to have for journalism, I just wanted to talk about Jesus and be with him and do work with him and be with his people. And like, I wanted to be in the story, not telling the story from the outside.
Right.
And so I kind of simultaneously decided to not pursue any of the solid opportunities I had post-grad. I took the unpaid internship and worked at a restaurant kind of part-time, did some babysitting part-time. My parents also helped me out. Thanks, parents. And so I took an unpaid internship, but the summer before it started, I spent 10 weeks in Ghana. And that became my career path. And then that year doing that ministry, it was while I was in Ghana that God gave me the idea for my first book. It's called The Lipstick Gospel, and it's like the whole Sistine Chapel story, and more. So that's kind of where he started to do that. And then that next year, as I was an intern at this college ministry, I just got to invest in women's lives and kind of be the big sister that I needed when I was younger. And it would I was just out of the shoes that they were just stepping into. And I thought that wasn't enough to qualify me to be in any sort of ministry, but the leaders of our ministry saw that differently. And I'm really grateful that they did. And so that was my job for a year, and I loved it so much. And I thought that I was going to do that forever. But then an opportunity kind of crossed my path, and it was to travel the world for a year doing mission work. And you guys know this now, I have the travel bug so bad. I could not pass that up. And so I basically walked away. I thought I was going to go to seminary. I thought I was going to be a college pastor. I thought this was my path. But I just couldn't turn this down. And so I ended up deciding to do this mission trip around the world for a year. And then I know we'll probably go back, but one of the things that they asked you to do as you were going to travel was to keep a blog, was to tell your story as you were going and, take pictures and make videos and stuff. And I initially was pretty frustrated by that request because I was are you kidding me? I just left journalism. I just walked away from
and I want to be present in the moment and not think about sharing it with other people. Yeah.
Yes, I did not want to do this. And I'm like, God, are you kidding me? They're talking about what kind of journalistic camera you can bring with you on the radio. I'm like, no. But I did. And I totally loved it. And it was crazy. People started to kind of read my blog as I went. And it was this really cool marriage of my journalism skills and the ministry that I had been working in for the last year, of getting to be a couple steps ahead of the people who were reading and getting to be this is what I learned along the way. If this, here's what might be helpful for you to know as you're heading into this. It was this really cool combination of that. And I mean, we're sitting here 11 years later, I think, and my job is basically the same. It's grown, but it's this cool combination of journalism and ministry mentorship, really. And it all started as I was traveling around the world that year.
That's so cool. And that's, and then working for that ministry after that year, that's when you and my daughter Emily got to know each other. And ultimately you met some guy named Carl. And
I did.
Tell me that story, if you can, briefly. How do you summarize you and Carl? But give it a shot.
Emily was there for all of it. It's so funny. So when I got back from that trip, the organization hired me to come on staff. And so I joined the marketing department, and I got to meet Emily Tuttle, who I just love so much. She and I were working together. So it was my first day, and I'm being paraded around talking, meeting all the people on the team. And so I meet Emily, and then I meet a guy named Carl, and he was the creative director at the time. And he was super intimidating and really smart. And those were the first two things I noticed about him. And it took about a month for us to kind of warm up to each other. But the first kind of time that happened was, as I was on the marketing team, they asked me if I would give a talk about storytelling and the importance of blogging and things like that to people who were about to do the trip. And so it was kind of my first real speaking engagement. There were probably 300 or 400 people there, and Carl made sure that he was there to hear me because he just wanted to see what I had to say. And so I gave this talk about the importance of storytelling, like for your own life, and also as a ministry tool at this, training for all these people who are about to do the trip. And it was like that weekend that he asked me on our first date. I got him with my talk.
There you go. There you go.
Got him with my talk. So
he said, I want to be part of this story that you're talking about.
He did. He really did. And we've been married for almost 9 years now. Wow. And we have two of the most brilliant, hilarious, adorable, wonderful, creative little girls.
Well, now don't just jump to that like that was like the next logical thing, and click your heels 3 times and it happens. That was the struggle of your life, wasn't it? Getting started with a family, and tell us some about that.
We, there were so many pieces of it. For a while, we weren't sure that we wanted to have kids. Mm-hmm. We both have so many things that we feel like we need to do in the world. And we weren't sure if that, we thought that being parents was part of it, but we didn't really know. And we didn't really know how it all kind of fit together. And so we spent a long time. We were married for, I want to say 6 years. I'd have to go back and count. We were married for about 6 years before we had kids. I think we were married for about 5 before we started even thinking about it. And, but I feel like God slowly but surely just kind of prepped us, my heart was, I was confused. I was scared. I was, I had all kinds of fears and doubts. Really, this kind of story repeats itself a couple times in my life, but I had a lot of the same doubts and fears about what is this going to look like? What does this have to look like? Does it have to look like that in order to be a mom? And but God just sort of slowly unwound that. And so we decided we wanted to try and have kids. And we started trying, we're trying, and just nothing was happening. And we started doing some tests at about a year, and they could not find anything wrong with either of us. Mm-hmm. And so we then did IUI, medicated IUI, for anyone who's familiar. And that didn't work. And we tried that about 4 times. And then finally our doctor was like, all right, guys, if we're looking at IVF at this point. Right. And so we did that in January of 2020. And we ended up with 1 healthy embryo at the end of all of it. It was like the price of a car. And it was so many shots, just piles and piles of needles of shots, and 2 procedures and just all kinds of things. And we ended up with 1 healthy embryo, and we're like, okay, what if this doesn't work? What if something goes wrong? And then also we wanted to, at that point, we're like, we want to have more than 1 kid. So how are we going to do this again? The whole thing felt so disappointing and frustrating and just a dead end. I remember my mother-in-law saying, you guys, you just need 1. You just need, don't discount this, who this 1 little life could be, just keep walking down this road. You don't know what's going to happen. We named our little embryo Larry because it felt weird to talk about like it was like it was like 5 cells, but it was weird not to know what to call it. So we called it Larry. And so then we, at the beginning, actually it was mid-March 2020, and the world is falling down.
As the world is falling apart. Great time to bring a child into being. Yeah.
No kidding. I'm like calling my dad, like, is this a good idea? He's like, oh, everyone's asked that, throughout history, but everyone's asked that for different reasons. But we get a call from our clinic and they're like, the government is recommending that everyone stop all fertility treatments. Everyone who's like in the process, that everyone stop. You are so far into it. I was like a week away from the transfer, and I'd been like pumped full of hormones. Like everything had to be exact, like down to the minute, the right timing. And so they said, we're going to have you keep going because you're so far into this. But like the clinic shut down a couple days after my transfer. And so we went into the clinic that day. We had like a whole tub of Clorox wipes under our arm. We're like Cloroxing everything. We have like, triple masks on, it was March 2020. The world was falling apart.
So scary. Yeah.
It was so wild. And so we did the transfer and had to wait for a while to find out what happened. And we were so happy to find out that we were pregnant. But they said, we want you to just come in. We'll have you in for an ultrasound in a couple weeks. I started feeling sick really, really fast, like just so miserable, like not actually miserable. I know that pregnancy is really, really, really hard for a lot of women. My pregnancy was actually pretty uneventful, thankfully, but I just felt totally terrible. And we go in for our first ultrasound, and the doctor's like, okay, so here's the like heartbeat, here's the baby. And then he's like, do you see this? Like, so here's a baby, here's the heartbeat. And then he moves the ultrasound wand and he's like, do you see this? Here's a heartbeat. Here's the baby. And he kind of starts going back and forth being like, are you guys seeing this? And he's like, kids, you're having twins. Like, oh my gosh. Our sweet little Larry embryo had split in 2 and become our 2 little beautiful girls, Annie and Quinn. And I just will never get over it.
So, hard time getting pregnant, 1 embryo, but we want more. But can I face this whole process all over again? And God goes, I got this.
And people ask us all the time, they're like, do twins run in your family? And my grandmother, who I just adored, was an identical twin. Her name was Anne, which is why we named one of our daughters Annie. But identical twins are never passed down. It's always fraternal twins. That's what's genetic. It's never identical twins. Identical twins are always like a miracle. Yeah. Like there's no scientific way to be able to split an embryo in 2. And I think that's just what that's the conclusion we came to throughout the whole process of trying to get pregnant and then having our girls was we were praying so hard throughout the whole thing. And we're like, God, I feel like you just have like a door closed. Like you could just open this. What are you doing? Do you not want us to have kids? Like what? I just don't understand. And then when we started seeing more doctors and stuff, we're like, okay, well, like this is a way of like making this happen. Like you can't circumvent God. You can't, no help that any doctors gave us could take God's spot out of the equation. Like it just couldn't. And so, the odds of the things that didn't work are just like shocking. Like, how is this possible that this didn't happen, that we weren't able to get pregnant like this? Like, yeah, we had a lot of medical intervention in our pregnancy story. but God was there every single step of the way and did things. Like, I feel like it was like a partnership between him and our doctors, and he was able to do something that they were helpful in a way that I can never repay. I can never communicate to them how grateful I am for their love and help and assistance and knowledge and expertise. But like, God still had so much to do with it. It's just incredible to me.
I love to watch you struggle for words, because that communicates more than the perfectly crafted sentence, honestly. So, and we could talk for a long time about this. You know, Ellen and I went down the infertility road for a while, never got to the in vitro, and we're old, so a lot of those things were not options. But
things have changed even in the last few years. It's crazy.
I know the struggle of that to a degree. And, you know, this debate that's been raging about where does science fit in? I mean, it's a partnership. True science is borderline supernatural anyway. But then for God to use science to help you, but then go, and let me just throw a kicker in here. Let me show you that there's stuff I can do that the docs can't. That's so cool. You know, Stephanie, I want to talk about your ministry and what God has built and is building now. You alluded to this earlier, but there's a really kind of frightening, overwhelming verse when Paul's writing to Timothy, and he says, you know, I want the older women to teach the younger women. And I've never yet met a woman who embraces that title. And I'm like, he didn't say old women. He said older women. And I think you grasp that younger than most anybody I know. You know, the word mentoring can sound so heavy and intimidating. And, you know, I've had people tell me, but I didn't do it perfectly. And what you have opened your life up to is to say, okay, somehow or other, I got through one phase of life. And as I look back on that, there were some good decisions I made that turned out to be really wise. There's some other places, I know it looks like a shortcut, but it's taken you straight into a minefield. And I don't want you to step some of the places that I stepped. And that is mentoring. That is the older women teaching the younger women. And your ministry takes a lot of forms. I know you have a publishing opportunity coming up. You've already written several books. But I'm especially interested in Friday nights and your podcast. Girls Night. Yes. You can listen to it any day, anytime. But Girls Night. Tell me about that. And you know, as you're listening to this, you may not fit that demographic either, but I bet you got a child or a grandchild or a friend or a coworker that this could be a godsend for them in connecting them with God. I mean, I love Stephanie's story because everybody right now is talking about deconstructing. What do I keep of my faith? I don't want secondhand faith. I don't want just because I grew up in this. You didn't grow up in this. And so you don't have a lot of that baggage to sort through. God is very much constructing your faith, and you're right on schedule with that. And, you know, for you to be willing to reach back, and, you know, early on you were talking a lot about being single because that was a fresh memory. And you would have never written about being a new mom. But now you're 2.5 years into that, and you got some things to pass on with that. But talk about the podcast and just not just what you do, but the community that God is building.
Yeah, it's been so, well, thank you for everything that you said. So something that Emily and I have in common is that we are both deeply in love with the West Wing. It's like came out, I don't know how long ago, but it's just an incredible show. If anyone hasn't watched it and needs like a good binge, The West Wing, so good. But there's this scene in it where they tell a story. And they say, so there's a guy walking down the street one day, and all of a sudden he falls into a hole, and he's down in the hole, and he tries everything that he can to get out, and just nothing is working. And so he starts calling up and asking for help. And so a guy walks by, or a doctor walks by, and he says, "Doc, I'm down in this hole. Can you help me out?" And the doctor says, "Yeah, sure." And he writes him a prescription and tosses it into the hole and keeps on going. And then a priest walks by, and he says, "Father, I'm down in this hole. Can you help me out?" And the priest says, "Sure." And he writes a prayer on a piece of paper, tosses it into the hole, and keeps on going. And then this guy's friend walks by, and he says, Joe, I'm down in this hole. Can you help me out?" And Joe says, "Yeah." And he jumps down in the hole too. And the guy goes, "What are you doing? Now we're both stuck down here." And Joe goes, "No, I've been in this hole before. I know the way out." And when I heard that, I was like, that is my whole purpose in life. It just is my whole purpose. I think that there are some really amazing things that can come from us just talking about where we've been. And the misconception, I think, is really what you said, that you feel like you have to have done something perfectly in order to have anything to impart. I think also it feels like we have to be like an expert, like we have to have a doctorate in whatever the thing is, to be able to speak into it, or it has to be so long ago that we I can't possibly talk about something I went through recently. But I think that when we go through something hard or challenging in our lives, that experience, if we're open to it, becomes the exact, that experience transforms us into the exact person that someone's going to need when they're walking through it too.
Exactly.
So there's no one better to walk you through something like IVF than someone who's been through IVF. And it's kind of bonus if they've been through it decently recently, because they actually remember.
Right.
There are things where if you ask me today, what medicine did they use? I'm gonna have to go look it up. I can't remember. But if you would have asked me a little bit, a little while ago, I would have remembered exactly what medicine and exactly, what helped make this shot more bearable. Whereas it would take a little bit more digging because it's been a couple years now. And so I'm really glad that you mentioned that. And that's really been the heart of my podcast. It started because my husband, Carl, had been listening to podcasts for a while, and he loved them. And he's like, "I think you'd really like these. I think you'd really like doing this." And then also I had a series of really great conversations with friends, over dinner or on the phone. And I walked away from those conversations so encouraged and so tucked in the truth that I wasn't alone in what I was going through, and knowing exactly what I was supposed to do next. I just felt like God was speaking to me directly through the friends in my life. I just walked away with such confidence and comfort and clarity, really, from all those conversations. And so that combined with Carl's prodding, I think you'd like this podcast thing. I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. So because I honestly felt selfish having conversations with people in my life like Emily, who are so brilliant, and not getting to share their words with other people. And so I just started recording them, and we're 6 years into this, 17 seasons, 6 million downloads, something like that. And just I got to meet a girl a couple weekends ago who listens to the show. And she was like, when you first introduced the show and said, you want this to feel like a girls' night. She was like, I thought yeah, right. It's just, how are you going to do that in a podcast? That's just that's a nice idea, but I don't know that you're going to be able to actually execute it. And she was like, it does. It feels like that. It feels like we're all sitting together on the couch in our comfy pants, talking about the really, really, really important things of life and also the fun things of life. And they just all weave together. And it's this beautiful reminder that we're not alone in any of it. It's been a really big privilege to get to host this show.
So if somebody wanted to access that, what's it called? And
it's called Girls' Night with Stephanie May Wilson. And if you type that in anywhere to your podcast listening app or Google or something, it'll come up. We're pretty much everywhere.
And primarily followed by young women in their 20s and 30s, but you don't card people at the door if you're
We don't
older
talk
than
about
that and
No.
struggling to understand what's going on with my daughter or my daughter-in-law or my grandchild, there's a wealth of wisdom there. I love the verse in 2 Corinthians 1 that talks about we are most able, this is my paraphrase, but essentially it says we're most able to comfort others in the same way that we ourselves have been comforted. And that, I mean, to me, that is the overarching deal that God's got going in your life. And that motivates me to hear you saying yes to that, because there's a risk. You know, it's scary. It's threatening to bring somebody in to your relationship. I know you've been doing some stuff on engagement now, because that's relatively. If I tried to write something about engagement now, I mean, we've been married 43 years. That would be. I've got such selective memory. I've lost track of, is this really the right person? What if this doesn't work? Oh man, I've never put my heart on the line like this. But the visceral emotions of that aren't there anymore. But for you, they are. And I'm so thankful that you've said yes. And Carl's along for the ride, and that means sometimes you have an argument and then he gets talked about in a pretty nice way on the podcast. But, you know, and now as you've got these two precious daughters, people are going to be along for the ride in that adventure too. So I just want to say thank you to you. But your story is so cool, and it is the epitome of why I want to start this podcast. Because initially, you know, kind of up to our break, it was all about you making room in your story for God's story. Does it fit? You know, am I going to have to wear ugly shoes if I'm a Jesus follower now? And I mean, all that stuff. It's so
It's not the Bible. I checked.
Good. It's so us-centric. And then the second half of this conversation where you're like, okay, I get it. My story, for whatever reason, God is writing me into his story. And he wants to use me to even impact the plot line of other people's stories. That's just as awesome as it gets. So Stephanie, I'm so proud of you. I pray for you. I will pray for you more regularly now. And the chapters that God's written so far are great, but I cannot wait to see what God's going to do next in your life and Carl's, and now with your girls together. And thanks so much for joining me today on Step Into the Story.
Thanks for having me.
You know, as we get together each week, this is exactly the kind of conversation I'm hoping to have. And we'd love to have you follow us. We'd love to have you subscribe so you don't make an issue, don't miss an episode. But this particular conversation is one that I think could help so many people. And so think about, as I was listening to this today, who was I wishing could hear this? And you can be the bridge that connects them with the wisdom that God is pouring out through Stephanie. So thanks for that. And we look forward to next time we get together on Step Into the Story.
Thank you for joining us for the Step Into the Story podcast, powered by Walk Through the Bible. We'd love to hear what you think by giving us a review on iTunes or Google Play. Also, don't miss a single episode by clicking the subscribe button. If you'd like more resources to help you explore and live God's Word in your daily life, visit walkthrough.org. That's WALKTHRU.org. Walk through the Bible. Take a walk, change the world.